everybody, Courtney with Schneider Driver Recruiting. I'm joining you today with April again to talk to you a little bit about our intermodal division. So we come to you every week trying to get a new, different topic, new different things that are going on here in driver recruiting. And today, basically, we wanted to get a lot of questions regarding our intermodal line of business. What does it entail? What do I need to do it? Is it the right fit for me? So we're going to dive a little more into that. If you want to ask questions, definitely do so below. We'll answer those as quickly as we can. And you can still answer them after we go off live, because then we'll answer those to you after we're done for the day. So we'll kind of dive into that, and again, ask those questions if you have them.
Yeah, definitely. So with Courtney and I both being recruiters, a lot of times when we're talking about the different lines of business that Schneider or many other trucking companies have, is intermodal is one of those lines of business. And a lot of people simply ask, well, what is intermodal? How is it different than van truckload, for example? So intermodal, really what it starts with is a lot of things that come from overseas are shipped over on the boats in large containers. Those containers then go onto the rail yards, and it is a quicker way to be able to get things that we use every single day all over the country in a much quicker basis. So then once those containers are on the rail yards, there's certain hubs, if you will. Chicago, for example, is one of the large hubs where we're going to work in those yards. There's a machine, if you will, that is going to take those containers off of the railway and then place that into behind your tractor, and that actually becomes your trailer, if you will, which is that container.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
one of the big things with that Courtney, if you want to cover this in more detail, is those chassis and what Schneider's doing with those chassis.
Absolutely. So chassis, what is a chassis? Essentially, a chassis is what the actual container is sitting on in order to lock it into place. So when you're driving, that container doesn't come flying off. So the chassis, that frame essentially, if you want to refer to it, is really, really important that those are mechanically sound, not in any damage or repair. A lot of places that may have Class A drivers will rent out or share a chassis, or the rail yard might have chassis that you can change. We don't want to deal with that. So Schneider owns all their own chassis. So if you're a Schneider intermodal driver, you will have a Schneider chassis as well. So really important, we keep them as current and up to date, new as possible, so that you're not getting any sort of delays with anything that's old or damaged or just in not good working order. So that chassis is very important to be up to date. So that's why we now own all of our chassis. So exactly like April said, you get into the rail yard, it will pick the container up off the chassis or put it on in what I like to call the big claw, essentially. And that's what it reminds me of, is like a huge vending claw, but we'll literally pick up a 53-foot container and put it on or off the chassis. So it's pretty cool, pretty sweet.
Yeah. So one of the other big questions is, okay, if you're considering intermodal, what endorsements are needed to be able to do a intermodal position? So the big one is hazmat. So as far as that hazmat, there are other opportunities at Schneider that do reimbursement for hazmat. Intermodal does not. But the reason being, once you get that hazmat endorsement and you're able to haul that hazardous freight, any loads that you haul, you're going to get a premium pay if it's a hazardous load. So that in and of itself makes up for not getting reimbursed for it, because hey, every load that requires that endorsement, you're getting extra compensation just for having that endorsement.
Absolutely, absolutely. Other one that not all the accounts require, but some do, would be your tanker endorsement. The tanker, people are like, well, why? You're talking about the containers. Well, a container could literally be a tanker container. So majority of the containers you see will look like a dry freight container, that typical box type of container. Every now and then you could get a load that is like essentially a tanker one, where you're hauling liquid freight. So in that case, you do need that endorsement. So that's what we're going to ask that you haul as well. So great, opportunities then too, if you're ever, they don't have an intermodal position on your area, or you want to do that in the future, you can eventually do that, and you already have all your endorsements too, so great to get.
And one of the things with endorsements, just to add as well, for some of the accounts, not all the endorsements are required at time of hire. Depending on the account, sometimes there's like 60 days from date of hire, or, 30 days, or, every account's a little bit different.
Right.
But you don't have to be worried like, oh, I can't apply to an intermodal because I don't have these endorsements. Well, not necessarily the case. Sometimes we'll certainly, give you that time to get those.
Yeah.
The other question, speaking of endorsements, that we've been getting a lot is, everything that's happening in the world with COVID. Some DMVs are not open, some may be, limited hours or only for certain things. We understand, there's a lot going on right now, so as long as you're working on pursuing it, you're communicating with your manager on it, there is certainly a little bit of wiggle room with that 60 days, but, we want you to pursue it as much as possible, but we know it's uncertain times, so just wanted to, call that out there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So reminder, we are live right now. If you want to ask questions, definitely do so. A couple of you said hi to us already, so thanks for joining. Joe also said you hauled intermodal for Schneider once upon a time. I do like once upon a time, seems so long ago. Joe, we'd love to have you back. So make sure you're checking out schneiderjobs.com just to make sure that we have the, that we have intermodal options in your area. Like she mentioned before, there's a lot of hubs throughout the country. So some places may seem more intermodal than others. Chicago would definitely be in one of those major hubs. But we do have others, in California, Jersey, Texas as well, that have other big hubs as well. But even if you don't live in those areas, doesn't mean that there's not one available to you. So make sure to just check it out, see if you have something that's available to you in your area.
Yeah, and especially speaking of location as well, if you're in a location that is not very prominent for intermodal, one of the things that we have in our intermodal division is jet set. So once again, depends on where you live, but a lot of people say, well, what is jet set? So we will actually fly you to wherever the need is. You're in that area for typically about a 3-week time span. If you want to stay out longer, typically can do so. We book your airplane tickets, we cover the expense of it. Say an Uber ride, to and from the truck, we would reimburse you back for that. So you're not, in charge of that expensive travel.
Yeah.
But then you get to see all over the United States
Right.
and, fly all over and on our dime and then work for, 3 weeks in a different location and be able to experience intermodal even if you're not in a hub, like Chicago, for example.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So another couple of things I wanted to touch base on in terms of intermodal. She just mentioned jet set, and then you're traveling then in a region once you are going out. So a majority of our intermodal accounts are some sort of local or regional type of traveling, so you do get home more often. Drop and hook freight as well, so we're talking about getting in and out of rail yards, dropping a trailer off or container off, hooking up with a new one, and then you're on your way. So a lot of, not tons, a little bit, but not tons of freight that you have to touch or unload or do anything like that. So it's good to have that opportunity to, if you're looking to just kind of make the biggest bang for your buck and just move and go, intermodal would definitely be a good opportunity for you as well too.
Definitely. And as far as training, a little bit more details on that. For our experienced drivers, orientation for intermodal is 5 days in length. And then after that, we will then do in-ramp or on-ramp training in your location. So once again, we've been using Chicago for an example. Then you would get more comfortable in and out of the rail yards, navigating in that Chicago area, because that's what you will be doing so much of the time is in and out of those yards, picking up those containers and, putting them where they need to go.
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to touch base a little bit too on pay and a little bit about how that works. So pay with any line of business just depends on basically your experience, that's obvious.
Yeah.
But in our intermodal division, we pay not only rates per miles, but majority of the accounts will also have a rate per load as well. So the rate per mile is really awesome in terms of, a lot of times your rate per mile is the base for everyone, and then the load pay is based on experience too. So it can kind of vary again depending on where you're located at, but they usually are paid 2 separate ways. And then our performance pay that we offer to all of our associates based on on-time delivery, safe driving, fuel efficiency can always be, you can get up to an extra 6 cents more a mile or $6 more a load, depending on, again, where you're located out of and all that stuff. So one of our, definitely does well in terms of pay. If you want to stick to it and make sure that you're busting working hard and
Yeah.
doing that type of stuff. We wanna make sure that you are, having a good paycheck, and you will definitely with Intermodal, so. Couple more questions rolling in. Edwin's saying he's doing jet set soon. Great question. Wants to know if he can keep the same truck if he chooses. So depends on where you're out of and
Yes.
a jet set account that you're on. In some of the locations, depending on how much home time you have, you can get back into the same truck each time. Others, if you're home longer, then we need to really utilize that truck and continue to move freight. So, talk to your recruiter, Edwin, as to which type of account you're on, because it could vary depending on where you live, what type of account need for freight and availability of trucks too. So that's a really, really
That
great
is a
question.
great question. We have another question coming in from Levi. Do you have dedicated accounts in New York? Great question, Levi. Thank you for sending that question in and listening to us today. So best recommendation is just simply to go to schneiderjobs.com, put in your zip code of where you call home, and then all the positions that are available in your area will populate. We do have dedicated positions pretty much all over, but
Yeah.
once again, that zip code is so important, and a lot of drivers ask, well, why is that zip code so important?
Yeah.
The reason why is, depending on the home time that we're promising for different positions, it's all based off where the driver lives. So if we say, hey Courtney, we're gonna get you home, every single weekend and a day on Friday, we wanna be able to keep our promise. And the way that we can do that is it's really all based off that zip code and where you're calling home.
Absolutely, absolutely. So great question. Alejandro is also asking, do we offer rentals to and from orientation, or do we pay for them? So, because he's going to tanker orientation soon. Awesome, Alejandro, this is a great question. So, yes, currently right now we are offering rental cars, and to get you to orientation, so if you live a certain, usually about 100 miles is the buffer, we can offer you that rental car. We will cover the cost of it. You don't have to worry about booking it, paying for it, anything like that. We can book it for you, and then if you have to put fuel in it while you're driving to orientation, keep the receipt, we will reimburse for that, that expense. So, a great question, and another thing that we added recently, as of about March probably or so, when everybody kind of start social distancing and doing that sort of stuff, a rental is just another great way that you don't have to travel with a huge group of people and can keep yourself a little bit safer too. So, great question, absolutely. And good luck at orientation too, that's exciting. Awesome, we mentioned a little bit briefly about orientation for our experienced drivers. Inexperienced is open to you as well in your area. It's about a 3-week orientation, give or take a couple of days. We do all those training and orientations. You get a hotel room, you get paid for it, a single room hotel room I should add. So you get your own hotel room. We will do 2 meals a day. The rental car we mentioned, you can take your own personal vehicle too. If you don't want a rental, you can do that as well. And then we have a lot of variety of different locations that we have intermodal orientation at. So depending on where you live, we can definitely help you out to let you know where you're going to be going to. So great question. Those are every Monday as well.
Yes. Looks like we get another question coming in from Sean. What are the requirements for intermodal positions? Great question. So typically, hazmat and tanker endorsement are required. Usually you have about that 60 days to obtain those endorsements, so you certainly can apply even if you don't have them. For some positions, you may also have to have 3 or 6 months of Class A experience. Some you don't need any at all. So I would really just recommend going to schneiderjobs.com, putting in your zip code, and you can see what's available in your area. Once you click on the account, it will give you more specifics on the qualifications for each individual position.
Right, and I want to point that out too. On Schneider Jobs, it has a lot of detail in the account. So there's the typical positions that pop up when you type in your zip code. Click in on it, and it will explain you how long you have to get the endorsements, how much experience is required. There's sign-on bonuses for the account. If that applies to you, that will be all listed there as well. And we'll give you kind of a brief description and rundown as to what the position would entail. You can talk to a recruiter or one of our recruiting assistants as well to give you a little bit more information on pay and where you're going to be going, a little bit more about your travel area and things like that. So really drill in on to schneiderjobs.com. We also have a different line of business options in there as well. You can click on the intermodal page to find out a little bit more about intermodal as well too, so good question. Rick, asked for training orientation, do people have to share a room? So Rick, no, you get your own hotel room for training orientation. Previously in the past, we were booking double hotel rooms. Like we mentioned prior with everything the past couple of months, what we're gonna be doing is giving you your own hotel room so that we can socially distance, keep you safe and healthy, so that you're going into orientation, feeling comfortable essentially. So great questions, keep them rolling in, we got a couple more. Sean also asked, worked for Schneider once before, where would my orientation be held for intermodal? So Sean, kind of depends on where you live, we have a couple different hubs for intermodal orientation. One of the main ones in the Midwest being Chicago. Kearney, New Jersey is another orientational location, El Monte, California as well. And we have a small little area in Fort Worth, Texas too, that does some training orientation as well. So everything depends on where you live, where you're going. So just make sure to ask your recruiter. We can definitely tell you and get you a couple more details on that orientation as well and what it's going to obtain. So I was looking at the different thing up on the screen. April also mentioned as well that we do an additional little like mini training after your Schneider orientation. So if you live in Indiana, but you went to Chicago for orientation, we give you an extra 2 or 3 days of some sort of ramp orientation near your home that you can get comfortable on the ramp that you're going to be in and out of normally. So we got a lot of extra help. We got, you got a lot of opportunities to get a lot of good, training in for the intermodal division. So if you haven't driven it before, we definitely can help you out.
Yeah. And we just recommend to go to schneiderjobs.com and look at all the positions available in your area.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any questions, feel free to leave those below, and we will certainly answer those.
Absolutely. 844-5, or you can text 28,000, or excuse me, text to 20. Backwards. Text chat to 28,000. Oh man, one of those days.
It's been a long day.
Or 844 Pride to fill out an application. We'd really, really love to talk to you guys. So hope to talk to you soon.